So, in a bunch of years ago, around the time of Star vs. the Force of Evil, and when Disney Animation, Disney XD was doing some interesting things, we had things like Wander Over Yonder, Gravity Falls. At the same time, Jhonen Vasquez and Jenny Goldberg, who is a character designer in Rick and Morty, who works with him on Invaders in Comics, I believe at least, or at least they work together, they're collaborators, were working on developing a show for 4 years at Disney, and they tried to make a pilot, and Disney almost greenlit it, and then just like didn't because they're jerks. That's basically, or at least from what we've heard from their perspective. I don't know Disney's perspective. They didn't do interviews on this, but it sounds like a cool idea. Basically, it's a little girl who is taking care of a very important house, and she's the caretaker of kind of the universe. And she gets basically every episode in this very important house. This girl, Froley, who's 11 years old, has to like help this person and do like this amazing thing to help them and solve their life and solve the big mystery. And then you get a new person every episode. He came up with the idea, Jhonen Vasquez, when he was getting ramen with Jenny Goldberg, and thought it'd be funny if this girl had to make the greatest bowl of ramen, because without it would destroy the universe and stuff like that. It sounds like a cool concept for a show. I could see like thinking maybe it wouldn't work or something, but it's a good show concept, and he thought it was really good. There's like an intergalactic war as well. Those details make no sense to me. But if you think of like some of the better Invader Zims were these competitions and stuff like that, there's not much known about this show. There's clips that got released on a Vimeo account for a trailer for Titmouse, who's doing the animation. We know that apparently Jhonen Vasquez was big on Vine and posted Vines of it, and then posted things on Twitter later. I didn't know Jhonen Vasquez was big on Vine. This is like a new thing to me. But basically what happened is Disney, the development chain changed. And at first they were going to make a pilot, and there's a lot of stoppages. Then Disney was like, well, we make an animatic, then we make a pilot. And then I'm sort of confused, but I think they eventually made a pilot. And Disney basically was like, we're pretty much going to greenlight this. And then they didn't. They just didn't. In the same day, apparently. And Jenny Goldberg basically talks about how hard it was. She almost had a nervous breakdown over it. Those were her words in an interview. I'm not being weird about it. We also do know that from Game Grumps, Evan Hansen was voiced a role. Oh, is it Aaron Hansen? I don't really know Game Grumps. I'm sorry. Someone from Game Grumps. I should have just said that. And we do know some of the music came out from Jimmy Urine. In one of his albums, some of the music came out, and there's one of the songs in one of the animatics that's out there. But it's kind of like the show he was working on with Disney, when Jhonen Vasquez, I think, was brought in because they were doing different things. They're doing Wander Over Yonder. They're doing more creative different things with Disney XD. And I sort of don't understand why you would cancel this. Because Jhonen Vasquez and his brand, basically, it's like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Invader Zim. I see that merch still. Like, people still buy that stuff at Hot Topics. And I would think that anything he did, even if you made like 10 episodes, if you made a t-shirt, it would sell out. You know what I mean? And I don't really understand from Disney's perspective, like, what was so horrible about this. Like, it just, obviously, it looks, if you look at any of the animation, and when this video later you will, and it seems like something that would work with Star vs. Force of Evil, and all those shows I hear referenced all the time. So to me, I think it was a major miscalculation by Disney, but apparently from what Jhonen Vasquez and Jenny Goldberg, and we're mainly going off them in fairness to a major corporation, I guess, is Disney mainly bought it because they were worried, since it was pitched, that it would become a hit for someone else. That's their interpretation of it. And they didn't want that to happen, so they bought it, but then they didn't do anything with it, which I think also goes to show you that, like, yeah, I do think he's enough of a name. He could launch a new show, I think. And apparently he can't. They did try to think about buying the rights back, and it was such an astronomical number that they couldn't do it, and Disney would still own a part of it, basically. And so they couldn't buy it back because it was too high, and Disney still being attached. So it's basically nothing will happen with Very Important House. It will never become anything other than kind of this failed pilot that Jhonen Vasquez worked on for 4 years. So if you're ever like, hey, why doesn't he ever do another thing? It's because Disney fucked around with him and told him in one meeting this was happening, and then in another in the same day it was over. And it sounds like they just fucked around and treated them terribly and messed up a really cool animated show from what it looks like. I don't, maybe they saw something that made it unappealing. In my mind, it's worth giving him another show financially. It's probably a safer bet than any of the other shows they actually picked up because of Jhonen Vasquez. And all you have to do is sell that and put it in Hot Topic. And I'm sure it was, I'm not being in sort of a jerk about it and making fun of him. I'm like, serious, like this guy is a brand, you know what I mean? And I think it's interesting that they would disrespect someone who has that strong of a brand, but also shows you Disney doesn't really like auteurism in animation, if you haven't noticed, unless you're Jennifer Lee or Pete Docter. I think maybe that's part of it. I think it was a bit of a disrespect for him and his brand. Maybe it was too weird. Maybe it was too unappealing. Maybe it wouldn't. It does seem like something that would play right after Star vs. Force of Evil and do very well, but what do I know? I don't have all the information. I have very limited things, but this is, I wouldn't even say lost media. It's kind of one of the great animation never made media. And I sort of wish Jhonen Vasquez got at least a bit more of a shot to make something cool like Very Important House. With Titmouse too. Come on.